Hey YouTube, my name is Amber. I am currently a telemetry nurse in New York. I have been a nurse for 14 months, a little over 14 months. And this is my first YouTube video. And the first video I decided to do is on how to pass your NCLEX. And the reason I decided to do this video is because I received so many questions from friends, from people I work with, about what I did to pass my NCLEX. So I decided to make this video so that I can give you an insight of what I did to pass, how to stay encouraged, because I did fail my NCLEX 2 times before passing, and just a few tips and pointers that you can use to pass your NCLEX. So here we go. So I'm going to be looking down a little bit because I wrote down some things that I felt were important. So I'm gonna just dive right into the content. The first resource that I used about 4 resources, so I'm gonna go through each of them individually, and a lot of these resources like people have questions about, so hopefully I can answer everything, and if I can't, just leave a comment below, or you can email me and I will try my best to answer anything else that you guys have questions on. So the first resource I used was Kaplan, and I did do an in-person course. I literally drove all the way to like Westchester, Yonkers area, and I did a Kaplan course. So this book is kind of big, it's 600 pages. How do I feel about Kaplan? I feel like it was very helpful. Kaplan basically tells you how to answer the question, so even if you have no idea what the content is or what you're looking at, you are able to pass the exam, in my opinion. But I didn't do Kaplan by itself, so I can't say like if you just do Kaplan by itself you can pass. But I know a lot of people in my class that only did Kaplan by themselves, and then we stayed in contact after and they passed the test. So the beginning of this book pretty much tells you how the NCLEX is formatted. So it tells you, you know, obviously you need critical thinking skills, and it tells you that it's a computer adaptive test, which means that as you answer questions correctly or incorrectly, the NCLEX gets harder or easier and adapts to the way that you are going with the exam. And then it just tells you about Kaplan's way of studying and passing the exam. So if you Google things, Kaplan has their decision tree that they use. That's very helpful. They completely teach you how to use their decision tree. And I found myself honestly writing down each step on my NCLEX, like on a piece of paper, and going through them, and it actually did help me on my NCLEX. It really did. So I would definitely recommend Kaplan. I think it was an amazing resource. The teacher that I had was great. She actually is only in New York certain months, and then other months she goes to Florida. Like she spends half of the year in New York and half of the year in Florida. So I can write her email or name or whatever down here, and then when you go to the Kaplan website you can look her up. So that was the first resource I used, and as I said, Kaplan was very helpful. I appreciated all of the tips that they gave, and that lady that I did was extremely good, but I know that a few of the teachers I've heard have been really good. So that was my first resource. My second resource that I used was NCSBN. NCSBN. And these are the makers of the NCLEX. So these are the people who actually meet together. It's an organization, they meet together, and they're the people who create all of the questions and answer choices and everything for the NCLEX. So who better to study through than the makers of the actual exam. Like, and honestly, a lot of people do not know that in NCSBN actually makes a study guide and study course for the NCLEX, because so many people that I know have asked me how did I study, and I told them like I studied through the makers of the exam, and they're like, the makers of the exam have like a study thing? And they do. So I studied through them. I purchased their 3-week plan, which was $50. They have a 5-week for $70, 8-week for $100, and 15 weeks for $160. So I did the 3-week plan because I honestly didn't find out about them until kind of late while I was studying, and my NCLEX was like kind of already scheduled. So I did the 3-week plan, and the way they help you study along with Kaplan, because Kaplan also does this, is they break down to you the exam based on each topic. So the first time I studied for my exam, I was studying based on body systems and disease processes with each body system. So for example, if I was studying like hematology, then I would go through each type of anemia and each disease process in hematology, and then I would go to cancers and I would study each type of cancer, and that was just way too much. It was so overwhelming for me. So I decided to go based on Kaplan and also NCSBN and study the way the NCLEX is formatted. So this website, and you can honestly find this anywhere online, it's not only on this website, but it breaks down the NCLEX into the topics that are on there. So for example, 17 to 23% of the NCLEX is management of care, and this pretty much includes delegating tasks. It includes like your nursing care plans and just disease processes and prioritizing different things that you need to do. So this was good. Then 9 to 15% of the exam is safety and infection control. 11 to 17% is physiological adaptation. Then you have 12 to 18% is pharmacology. You have 6 to 12% is basic care and comfort, and the list goes on. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 areas that are on the NCLEX, and they're broken up by percentage of which areas are the most important. So you'll see majority of your questions from one area, but if you study using this, I promise you, you will pass. Because a lot of people I know who did not pass made the same mistake that I made the first time, and they went through each disease process and each system, and they studied cancers, and then they studied anemias, and then they studied this and that, and that's not the way the NCLEX is formatted. Like, you don't know how many questions on cancers you're going to get. You don't know how many questions on pediatrics you're going to get. So the best way to study, to me, in my opinion, is based on the different subcategories that the NCLEX is broken up into. So that's what I did, and it really did help me. So NCSBN, they break down their study guide into each part, and then they give you all of the material for each part that you need to know, and then you also get questions on each part. And you also do a pre-test, so they do test you and see what you know, what you don't know. Then you start to review. You do the practice test, you review the points to remember, and then you go through each category that is breaking down on the NCLEX, and then at the end you do a bunch of practice tests and questions. So it's really good. I used it in conjunction with Kaplan because Kaplan breaks down their material the same exact way, and then I also did follow-up questions with YourWorld. So that was my NCSBN spiel, but they saved my life. Like, that website and study plan completely saved my life. And I would definitely recommend anyone who is going to take their NCLEX or getting ready to take their NCLEX to use it. So that was the second resource that I did. The third resource that I used, this book, Prioritization, Delegation, and Assignment, by Linda LaCharity and two other people. This book is heavy on the prioritization, delegation, and assignment. And the reason that that's so important is because these three things, they fall into the management of care category that I spoke about earlier. So that's 17 to 23% of your NCLEX. So if you can completely ace this book, in my opinion, or even like you just start getting the questions and you know, answering them correctly, you will do great on your NCLEX. And so this book was really helpful. It tells you how to delegate tasks, the 5 rights of delegation, understand the scope of practice for RNs, LPNs, and the UAPs, which they named them on the NCLEX, which is like your PCAs, nurses, aides. And then it goes through each thing. So it goes through, it says like prioritization in common health scenarios. So like pain, fluid electrolyte imbalances, neuro issues, GI issues, it goes through. And then it tells you prioritizing complex health scenarios, so such as like spinal cord injuries and patients with GI bleeds and things like that. So this book really helped me, and it's just a bunch of questions that you can answer. And what I did, I literally ripped out the answer keys. So I have all of the answer keys loose, and I would go through each question, answer each chapter, and then I will go refer to the answer key after. And the answer keys are really good because they give you a complete rationale. It's not like those books that just you answer the questions and then there's no rationale as to why. So this book is freaking amazing, and that's why my book looks like this, because I ripped out the answer keys. But I really did use this book, and I recommend it for anyone going to take your NCLEX. So that was my third resource. Then my fourth resource, which I'm sure if you are getting ready to take your NCLEX, so many people have told you about, so many people have discussed, is YourWorld. I know a lot of people who just did YourWorld alone to take their NCLEX, and they did amazing. The reason I used YourWorld in conjunction with everything else, because as I said before, I did fail my NCLEX twice. The first time I failed my NCLEX, I did just use YourWorld alone, and YourWorld is an amazing resource, but the problem that I had with YourWorld is it breaks everything down based on systems. So when you're answering questions, you're choosing like musculoskeletal and then you're answering your questions, or you're choosing neuro and then you're answering your questions. And in my opinion, if you don't have your material completely down, like, I am gonna be honest, when I was in nursing school, I really just studied to pass my exam at that moment, to pass my finals, to pass my midterms, and then I kind of let the material go over my head, which if you are still in nursing school looking at this video, please do not do that. But that's what I did. So I needed to either review material when I was studying for my NCLEX, or take a course, or like do something else, because I really had no idea. So when I was doing YourWorld, I wasn't doing that well. And then I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go take my exam. And then that's when I failed. So the best thing with that I could do was do the other resources that I used, not YourWorld on its own. But if you feel confident in your you know, studying, then you can definitely do YourWorld. So YourWorld is broken up into different days. So the 30-day question bank is $119. The 60-day is $149. 90-day is $179. 180, $249, and 360, $299, and the list goes on. They have a million, they have not a million, but like 7 different choices. So YourWorld gives you over 2,000 questions. They give you a self-assessment that you can use depending on which one. If you do the 30-day one, there's no self-assessments. So I believe I did the 90-day one, and that one gives you 2 self-assessments. So I did one self-assessment kind of like when I was like 2 weeks into studying, and then I did the next self-assessment like 2 weeks before my NCLEX. So the self-assessment really tells you like likely if you're likely to pass based on how you did, or if you're likely to not pass or you didn't do that well. So that was very helpful for me. And then if you do the more expensive options, you have the option of resetting your entire question bank. So me and actually one of my friends, she had took her NCLEX super early, and then she reset her Q bank for me, and then I was able to use it. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but so then we use the same exact YourWorld account, and we just reset the questions, and then I started using it after her. So that was helpful. If you are trying to save a little bit of money, you can do that. And that was good for me. Anyway, so YourWorld was my 4th resource. As I said, I didn't do it on its own. I did it in conjunction with Kaplan and also with my NCSBN. But it did help me. It did help me after I did my content reviews. So I didn't do well just doing YourWorld on its own, but I am me and you are you. Kaplan gives you a lot of questions also. I think over 2,000 questions as well. So you also have your Kaplan question bank that you can go through. And the Kaplan questions are very, very close to the NCLEX based on when I took it and when I did the Kaplan questions. And so that was good. That was helpful. YourWorld questions, they give you a long rationale, which is good. That's one reason that a lot of people like YourWorld. And it is helpful to get the rationale and just to read. And my biggest tip is just make sure you read your rationales, because sometimes you don't even realize it's like a subconscious thing. You will answer a question, get it wrong, get it right, and then you'll read the rationale and it'll click. Something will click in your head. And even if at that moment doesn't click, when you're sitting on your NCLEX, I remember there was a bunch of questions where I'm like, oh, I remember the rationale for this question, and I got the question, you know, and I did well. So the last time that I took my NCLEX, I passed in 75 questions. I literally took about an hour and a half to take the exam after using all these resources. But my first 2 times taking the NCLEX, I went all the way to 265. So I was there for like 3-4 hours answering. I got tired and dizzy and lightheaded, and I had to take breaks, and it was just not a good experience. So these are my tips and tricks. Not really tips and tricks, but my resources that I use to pass my NCLEX. I'm gonna do a follow-up video just on tips that I would tell you, whether it's from, you know, while studying, the day of test day, and even after test day. So just stay tuned for that video. But thanks for watching, guys.